What is going on, Colts Nation? Welcome back to another episode of Bring the Juice. Guys, Cody and Derek back for another one, guys. And we're going to do an episode later on looking at every single potential candidate. But we wanted to just start before we did that and just look at some realistic candidates for the Indianapolis Colts for this 2023 coaching search. And so, I mean, obviously, you look at all the potential guys, right? There's so many guys. We could be here for over an hour just talking about all the different guys. But I wanted to just kind of talk about some realistic options here for Indianapolis. Derek, I know we have a list here of guys. Talk to me about some of your most realistic options that would be kind of your top choices here.
Well, I mean, I definitely think the number one, and this is going to definitely be a tough one to get because I think there are a lot of teams that are going to go after this guy specifically this offseason, and that's Ben Johnson, the Lions OC. Even Zach Taylor last year, going into last offseason, was talking about, Ben Johnson and how him being promoted really is helping the Detroit Lions, right? And that was before the season that we're seeing now, right? So Ben Johnson, who, has taken this Lions offense and has made the Lions, who have Jared Goff at quarterback, who was traded away in case of Matt Stafford, looking like it actually is the best offense in the NFL when all their guys are healthy, right? So it's amazing to see what Ben Johnson has been doing and to be able to see what he's able to do with the vertical threat offense that they're able to portray. I think that's another one that I think would be very fantastic for them to look forward to doing. I think if you're going with, I mean, I know you made a video already, Cody, about, the Colts maybe going after Jim Harbaugh. And, even guys in the Colts media have, been talking about how they think that is probably like top of the wish list sort of thing. That definitely seems like a very smart one for me because, Harbaugh's been a head coach. He understands how it goes. He's been a winning head coach and all things considered. So I definitely think that's another one. If you're going with another guy who I think could be an insane character, I think D'Amico Ryans from the 49ers, their DC. Listen, I understand that, we're trying to find, a coach that is offensive minded. If you can find a solid OC to be in the weight of D'Amico Ryans, then I think you would be okay still. I think the thing with D'Amico Ryans that interests me is again what he's done with the 49ers defense. He has been to the 49ers what Ben Johnson has been for the Lions, right? Has taken one side of the ball and has completely made them dominant in every aspect. There is not a single thing that the 49ers don't do well defensively. There's not a single thing that the Lions do offensively that they haven't done well because of Ben Johnson. It's the same thing with D'Amico Ryans on the defensive side. And I think D'Amico Ryans also is more of a for me, he's a very actionable guy. He's a very loud guy. He's somebody that shows emotion, somebody that, wears that the emotion on the sleeves, right? And I think that can honestly do a lot for a locker room, especially one that's trying to establish an identity. I think that's important, especially on a specific side of the ball. If you're trying to establish, some toughness and you're trying to establish your identity again, I think that's another one that could definitely be very interesting. Again, you'd have to find a good OC though to back that up, and that's something that the Colts are going to have to do either way. But we'll see. But it might be interesting. Who is, and it's also going to come down to who is going to bring somebody with them, right? Because that's going to be the important aspect of all this. But those are just a couple of the names. I know we have a bunch more, but those are a couple right off the bat that I think would be good for this team.
Yeah, I want to just briefly touch on all three of those guys because I think any three of them would be awesome. Ben Johnson for what he's been able to do in Detroit. I mean, really, you look at it, he has Jared Goff at quarterback, Jamal Williams at running back. Like, it's not like he has these mega superstars right now. He has a lot of guys that are just okay, or young and inexperienced on the offensive side, and he's basically turned it into a top 10 offense, and so that's huge. And then with the other two guys, Jim Harbaugh, obviously, we know the success he's had at both levels, the college level and the NFL level. With the 49ers. So I definitely think that would be one. I just wonder, how much control does he want of this organization? That's my biggest question mark with him. But I definitely think he'd be a motivator kind of guy that would get the best out of this team. He's shown he can do that with teams. He knows how to build winning football teams. So that would definitely be a pipe dream and be amazing. And there are ties here to Indianapolis for sure. So I think that, that report definitely has some legs to it. And we'll see. It's up to Jim Harbaugh, I think. Does he want to come to Indianapolis? Does he want to, potentially take on a rookie quarterback and basically develop him? We'll see on that. And then with DeMeco Ryans, yeah, I mean, I think the one thing that I think makes it so interesting is I almost wonder, because of the last hiring process with Frank Reich, if the Colts will kind of go almost opposite. Frank Reich, a very, mild-mannered guy, doesn't say a whole lot, but with DeMeco Ryans is kind of the opposite. Like, he's going to tell you what he thinks. Very much the Mike Vrabel-esque kind of coach, which I think all along, if Chris Ballard stays, that's the kind of coach he probably wanted to begin with. And that's what Josh McDaniels, love him or hate him, Josh McDaniels probably would have been the kind of guy that would have done that. So, all that to say, like, that's the kind of, I think, personality that Chris Ballard, I think that fits Chris Ballard and the team he wants to build. So I definitely would be interested in any three of those guys. There's a couple other guys that I think could be realistic for Indianapolis as well. You talk about Ken Dorsey, the OC from Buffalo, obviously what he's been able to do. He has Josh Allen, so that's definitely a big help in that department. But, this Buffalo offense continues to be one of the best in the NFL. You can't just overlook that. Ken Dorsey has something to do with that. And then you look at, Leslie Frazier, who's been a head coach before. He has some experience right now. He's also with the Bills as their DC. And, I think he's a guy that you'd bring in and you wouldn't question about the head coach experience. That would not be a question mark. We've seen him in the NFL. So he's less of a wild card, but you kind of know what you get with a Leslie Frazier kind of guy. I think one guy that definitely interests me is Seattle's OC, Shane Waldron. With what he's been able to do, Derek, with Geno Smith this year, I know it hasn't always been the greatest, but like, everybody thought Geno's just, a placeholder for the next quarterback. And what he's been able to do, I mean, obviously you want to credit Geno as well, but Shane Waldron's been able to get a ton out of this offense, far more than a lot of people thought he would.
Yeah, 100%. And going off of a few of those guys, Ken Dorsey, yeah, absolutely has, taken that Bills offense and seems to have provided an even more bigger dynamic for that offense, right? We already knew it was really, really good. Now, I mean, it looks even better than what it already did. Do question though, how much of that is Ken Dorsey? I mean, it has been his only first year in that role. So you kind of need a little bit more sample size if you're wanting to be careful. But then again, you're right. You're seeing the difference. And of course, you're right with Shane Waldron with the Seahawks. I mean, yeah, you got to give credit to Geno Smith, but we've seen Geno Smith play football before, and he's never looked this good. So, I mean, the fact that he does look this good now, maybe it's because he has the better weapons now. Maybe it is all that and such things. But we've seen, primarily backup quarterbacks in the NFL before, not really take that next step, right? And not look really good because they just don't understand the system very well. But here he is getting it down, and he's got a really good chance in Seattle, and he has revitalized his career so much so to a point that teams are now wondering if they're going to start offering Geno Smith good money at the end of the off season because of what he's doing in Seattle this year. And I think a lot of that also has to do with with Shane Waldron and making it easier for Geno Smith to break all this down and get better, because we've seen Geno Smith's game evolve throughout the season and it's gotten much better. I do want to mention one name that I didn't put on my list that you put on yours, and I think it's very interesting that you bring it up. Eric Bieniemy was another one. I was talking with my friend about that a lot in our trip last weekend. I'm wondering why, like, we do this every year, right, Cody? We hear Bieniemy's name every single offseason get put with a head coaching, label put behind it, but yet he's never been a head coach yet. And it just makes me wonder, why is that? I mean, does he truly want to be a head coach and we're just putting that label on him to begin with? Is there actually something deeper behind it as the reason why? Because we've seen Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes give praise to Eric Bieniemy. So there's no question that, Bieniemy does work, and, the guys are backing him up, and they say he does a lot with scheming and everything. Just makes me wonder, like, why hasn't he been a coach yet, but yet we continue to keep putting his name in there?
Yeah, I mean, you just look at his track record. I think you almost have to consider him a candidate, like just because of what they've been able to do. And he's been, at the helm of that for a long time. But, some guys just aren't head coaches and they don't want to be that. So maybe that's just the case with him. He's like, I like what I do. And I don't really, feel like making a change here. I'm in a great situation with the Chiefs, to win potentially more championships. So I don't blame him. If he doesn't feel comfortable doing it, that's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. So, yeah, I thought it was interesting. I just wanted to know. I was very interested in talking about that one because that was one of the only things that I wondered, because I talk about it with my friend all the time, and I just wonder why that is. I think that everyone has the we talk with about Eric Bieniemy, and a lot of people like to bring up the Rooney Rule aspect of this whole process, right? And trying to get these black coaches into the head coaching department. And I wonder if it's just for that rule specifically, and everyone keeps talking about Eric Bieniemy and trying to understand it from that perspective, and that's why he gets lumped into the head coaching aspect. And like I said, I just don't know if that's the truth or if he just really doesn't want to be a head coach. I mean, we've been saying it for 5 years that Eric Bieniemy might be a head coach at some point, and he just hasn't been.
Yeah, I don't even know. Has he even taken any interviews? Like,
I thought he has. I thought he has, but I don't know. It's just weird. It's really odd. It's like I've never seen somebody's name thrown around the head coaching carousel so much, yet that hasn't been given a job yet. It's just weird.
It is weird. It absolutely is weird. There's a couple other names you could throw in there too. But we can get that when we kind of expand to the bigger, wider head coach search, which there's a lot of guys we could talk about. So these, I think, are some of the most realistic options here for Indianapolis. So let us know, guys, your thoughts here on some of these potential head coaching candidates. If you guys want us to go more in depth, just let us know in the comments and stuff, and we'll take some time to do that eventually. Maybe later on in the off season and stuff like that. Yeah. But thank you guys so much. Really appreciate all your support. And as always, go Colts.